We all know Sam Wilson is going to use his shiny new shield, so that's not exactly a surprise. So let's look at some of the best comic book storylines we could see in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Captain America Civil War is one of my favorite Marvel movies, and I know there are a lot of fans out there who feel the same. But if you're a comic book fan, then you know there's actually a Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. Okay, I made up that last part, but there is a Civil War II event, and I think some aspects of it will likely end up being incorporated into The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, especially since we know Wyatt Russell has joined the cast as John Walker. I've talked about John Walker and his role as U.S. agent before, so I'll keep this short and sweet. He's a government-sponsored hero who was supposed to be a new Captain America type, but one who was better at following orders than Steve Rogers. Obviously, this means he and Steve aren't exactly the best of pals. Since Sam Wilson has the shield this time around, it's likely that John and the government won't be his biggest fans, especially since he already proved in the first Civil War that he doesn't always play by the rules. In the comics, U.S. Agent is ordered to track down Sam and take his shield back, since the government thinks he's not worthy of acting as Captain America. He's resistant at first, but forces conspire to convince him that Sam's just not fit for the position. Eventually, a Steve Rogers influenced by Hydra manages to push him into a confrontation with Sam. With Helmut Zemo and the government against Sam and Bucky, it would be simple enough to see them manipulate John Walker into attacking Sam, much like he does in the comics. It would be interesting to see how U.S. Agent copes once he realizes he's been manipulated. Will this give him a push to break free of government control, or will he still be determined to follow orders? This conflict isn't the biggest part of the Civil War II storyline in the comic, which also involves a life-threatening premonition and the moral quandary of preemptively tackling potential problems. Incorporating this part of the story onto the small screen would not only be interesting, but it could set the stage for getting more epic parts of the story onto the big screen as well. I know I should be happy with the fact that we're getting a two-hero show with The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I admit to hoping that we might get at least one more hero added to the mix. Right now, I have my eye on the Not My Captain America storyline, which could make a great addition to the show. After all, I couldn't help but notice that after Avengers Endgame, the position of Falcon seems to be vacant. Joaquin Torres moved to the United States at the age of 6 and did his best to help out his local Mexican community. Basically, he already had the helpful, selfless attitude of a hero. He just needed to work on his branding. He ended up captured by the insidious Sons of the Serpent, a group that specialized in committing crimes against foreigners and wanted to divide the citizens of America. Even though the name Sons of the Serpent sounds really cool, rest assured that they were actually anything but. They abducted Joaquin in order to perform experiments on him. Listen, I know getting taken in by an evil organization is a bad thing, but the silver lining here is that Joaquin did end up with superpowers as a result. He became a human-bird hybrid with a little bit of vampirism thrown in just for fun. Sam Wilson as Captain America went on a mission to save Joaquin, who in turn helped him fight against the Serpent Society. Since Sam Wilson wasn't using the name anymore and Joaquin did him a solid by helping him out, a new Falcon was born. Or hatched, I guess, if we're sticking with the bird theme here. I'm not asking them to rename the show to The Falcon, and the Winter Soldier, but I wouldn't mind seeing Joaquin join the cast. In the comics, he works as Sam's sidekick, but it seems like Bucky Barnes will already be fulfilling that role on the show. So it's possible that Joaquin would need to find his own backup. And in the comics, we've seen him join up with Ironheart and the Champions. It's possible that if he's introduced in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he could end up being one of the young Avengers, since he'll be pretty new to the whole superhero thing. There's a comic book precedent for Sam Wilson becoming Captain America, but he's not the only hero who's worn the red, white, and blue over the years. There was a time when his trusty sidekick Bucky Barnes took over the role when Steve Rogers was thought to be gone for good. Now, obviously that didn't happen in the MCU, but that doesn't mean we can't see some great Bucky storylines playing out. Because, as you might imagine, his term as Captain America wasn't exactly controversy-free, especially when his past as the Winter Soldier came out. In The Trial of Captain America, Steve Rogers is back, but Bucky has his shield. It's a classic superhero conundrum. Two heroes, one superhero name. But Helmut Helmut Zemo is there to complicate matters even further. We've already seen Bucky struggle because of the weight of his past, and we've seen that even some Marvel heroes struggle to be forgiving. "I was brainwashed by Hydra" isn't an excuse that tends to go over well. Trust me, I've tried it. Even though Bucky isn't going to be acting as Captain America in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he's clearly working as a co-hero to the famous, or should I say infamous at this point, Captain America. This definitely puts him in a position to be heavily scrutinized by the public, which is why I think elements of this storyline would work so great in the show. Because not only is the American public skeptical that Bucky deserves a pass for his actions while he was the Winter Soldier, but Helmut Zemo is too. Zemo wasn't influenced by mind control during the events of Civil War, but he could easily consider his Avengers-fueled grief to be a mitigating circumstance. I can't imagine his lawyers didn't bring that up at least once during his trial. In the comics, Zemo isn't happy that the public might give Bucky a pass for his actions while condemning him for his own misdeeds. It's hard to say just how much the general public knows about Bucky's past in the MCU. After Civil War, even Steve Rogers was considered a criminal, despite the government still using him as a PSA spokesperson. Helmut was able to tear the Avengers apart before, and releasing information about Bucky's past would be a good way to influence the public opinion regarding not just him, but his companion Sam Wilson. Bucky's obviously going to do his best to help Sam, but what if just being around makes it worse for him as the new Captain America? Now that the Avengers membership is at an all-time low, it seems like the perfect time to introduce new teams of heroes into the MCU. Of course, we're going to get to see Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson team up in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but they've both been affiliated with various organizations in the comic books as well. I think this show could help set up a particular team of heroes who were once a team of dedicated evildoers. I'm talking about the Thunderbolts, a group who was originally formed by none other than Helmut Zemo in the comics. We know that Zemo is going to be one of the villains of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but we also know that he understands the value of teamwork. You know, by the way he made it his mission to tear the Avengers apart in Civil War. But having a team on his side would be a huge advantage, and there are undoubtedly plenty of people who would love to take down our active heroes. Starting a group of villains is one thing, but there's something special about the Thunderbolts. Mostly it's that they're all villains who are just pretending to be heroes. This group is the epitome of hiding in plain sight, at least at first. Since things got hectic after Endgame, Zemo could use the confusion to his advantage by positioning his cohorts as heroes. Of course, in the comics, this works great, right up until it doesn't. Turns out most of the villains actually like being heroes, and once they have a taste of that sweet, sweet justice, they don't want to live lives of crime anymore. Turns out the fake-it-till-you-make-it mentality is a real thing, at least in this case. Now, this all might sound pretty unrelated to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I think there's definitely a connection to be made here. After all, do you think Bucky's going to be content acting as Sam's sidekick forever? In the comics, he leads his own team of Thunderbolts who are all at least partially reformed villains. If we see Zemo forming the Thunderbolts and our heroes battling against them, this could set the stage for Bucky leading the group later on. As much as I love instant gratification, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing this set up in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There are lots of great Sam Wilson storylines in the comic books, especially during his time as Captain America. But I want to talk about one which celebrates his time as the Falcon and could potentially be reworked to fit into the MCU. I know that aspects of my favorite comic book characters need to be changed as they leave their paper prisons to be reborn in the MCU, but it's kind of a bummer that this version of the Falcon doesn't have any avian superpowers. In the comics, he can telepathically communicate with birds, which makes the fact that he goes by Falcon make a lot more sense. His character was celebrated in The Coming of Falcon, which tells the story of Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson back when the former was still Captain America, of course. The Red Skull switches bodies with Cap and hopes that his former minions, the Exiles, will do him a solid and defeat his most hated enemy. This seemed like a solid plan, what with them being pretty mad about the fact that he betrayed them and Steve being stuck in his body. Fighting in the body of the Red Skull is not easy, and Cap ends up getting some help from a guy you might have heard about, Sam Wilson. Oh, and his Falcon Red Wing, who he communicates to telepathically. This is obviously a classic Falcon tale, but I think it could also be incorporated into the MCU. It would be interesting to see this story reimagined with Sam and Bucky instead of Sam and Steve. While we know Sam is going to be taking on the role of Captain America, Bucky might need some help finding his way as a hero who's separate from his past as the Winter Soldier. Even though Bucky knew Steve first and the two of them share an unbreakable bond, Sam spent a ton of time with Steve in the aftermath of Civil War while Bucky was recovering in in Wakanda. But having Bucky help Sam out of a tight situation, learning to work together as a team, and establishing Bucky as a hero are all important elements of the comic book story that could be reworked for the show. I'm most excited at the prospect of seeing the Thunderbolts join the MCU. Let us know which comic book storyline you'd like to see in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the comments section down below. And then click subscribe for more great videos from us here at CBR. As always, thanks a lot for watching.